manufacturing, technology, hot topics, and a little bit of tomfoolery. This is the MTD Podcast.
Welcome to MTD CNC's podcast. Today we're here at the NEC for the Advanced Engineering Show. We made it here, guys. Gio, how'd you get here today?
I drove. It's just a short journey up the road from me, from Nuneaton, but the weather was a bit shocking, and when I arrived I was...
winter now.
It is winter now. The summer's definitely over.
Halloween last night?
It was Halloween last night.
Joe was out on the
trick-or-treating. I've got some sweets for Joe, actually. to be honest,
I enough of those already.
Trick-or-treat. I sent the kids out, and they got 50% of all sweets they earned. So they went to
Who had the other 50%?
Well, I had them. You got to teach them a lot. Teach them entrepreneurialism. They got 50% of everything they made.
And what's this I hear about the car parking cost, Joe?
Oh, don't get me started.
Bone of contention today?
Well, I left the back cave nice and early this morning, just in time to get a Starbucks on the M42, only to be dismayed when I got here. It's a £12 to park the car.
£12 to park the car? Well, I actually came on...
£16, Joe, to park the car.
Yeah, your car's bigger than his, maybe.
Was it?
£16?
Well, I haven't paid yet. I just saw the sign. Is it? That's even worse, yeah. If Paul would have driven, it'd taken up 2 spaces. £32 for Jones.
Well, I came on the train, which is always a good thing. Anyway, we're going to be talking to Jeremy Whittingham this morning from Easyfairs about the show, and obviously having an open conversation about it. Welcome to the show, Jeremy. Tell us a little bit about Easyfairs and the Advanced Engineering event.
Well, Easyfairs is a Belgian-owned company, and quite young. Has really only been kicked off about 15 years ago, and it's grown pretty much exponentially throughout the last few years by acquiring and launching shows all over the world. And it's probably about, I believe, number 18 in the world's top 20 event or exhibition organising companies in the world, and it's the only one I think that's still privately owned. So it's still not too corporate, and it's still lean enough to be able to launch things quite quickly and change things quite quickly without going through too much corporate management. So we're able to react to markets quite well and quite effectively.
Okay, and obviously today we're talking about advanced engineering here with Gio and Joe as well. Tell us a little bit about this show.
Yes, well, I mean, we've had a great couple of days today. As you may have heard, it's our 10th anniversary, and we're very excited about that. And I'm probably still the only person who is still here since its launch in 2009 in Manchester. Manchester Central, in fact, it was launched just as aero engineering, with about 80 exhibitors, maybe 1,200 visitors. And then it was really in 2010, the following year, we first came to the NEC in the pavilion, small area, and we launched the Composites Engineering Show right alongside. And that's really where it started to take off, because this is where we found where people from one sort of sector were coming into contact with other people. So the crossover between aerospace and composites was great to see. And there wasn't really a composite show of that type happening in the UK at the time, and there's a lot happening in the value chain over here. So then it went from strength to strength from there. We could organically launched other shows alongside. So the next one was the Automotive Engineering Show. I think that was in 2012. And before long, we were about our 4th edition. We were in Hall 5, which is the NEC's biggest hall, and it kind of became this large show that we started to call Advanced Engineering as a sort of umbrella, and it's been great.
So I mean,
yeah.
and you've obviously had. We've been around for the last couple of days. It seems like there's been, some good footfall.
Yeah, my big thing is trade shows. You say been going 10 years, which is quite some feat. How's it changed over that period of time? You've grown, which is fantastic. But how is that down to visitor experience? Is that down to change in methodology? How's it happened?
I think it's a combination of things. Yeah, it's we've certainly sort of grown it to a great extent by having these co-launched other areas that we bring out, and we usually have something new, if not every year, every other year. So we might have the automotive sector, which means then that we partner with a lot of new people, a lot of magazines, online associations as well, of course, industry bodies. So we've been able to engage. We feel we're quite good at doing that, engaging with, the real industry bodies who can help us get into the nub of the industry, get to the right sort of people that we want to come as visitors, for instance, and exhibitors.
We'll touch on the experience of the visitor, but just to give our listeners a view of the size of this show. How many exhibitors are here, and how many visitors do you expect over the 2 days?
Yeah. Well, it's probably similar to last year, which is probably at its biggest at the moment, which is about with co-locating exhibitors about 600. I don't know the exact number, but it will be about that. And also, we expect over the 2 days it will be about 15,000 attendance. That's including the stand personnel as well.
Jeremy, I had a good walk around yesterday, and it was a very buoyant feeling about the show. Very busy, and lots of people from lots of different sectors, and it was great to be walking around. However, one thing I did notice, I've been to many shows, and a lot a draw to a lot of the shows that I've been to before is seeing machine tools and hearing the machine tools, seeing components being manufactured. There's only one machine tool manufacturer that's at this show. What's the reason that a lot of the machine tool people are not here?
It's an interesting one. I think one reason for that is probably down to the fact that the format of this show is very compressed into 2 days, and machine tool and machinery companies often will need more time for a build, which is a longer tenancy, maybe almost like for the whole week, which obviously means that would put a lot more economically on this particular show, that we'd have to have tenancy a lot longer to be able to get more of those people coming in, preparing and building. It's something we've discussed because we would like to potentially have more of those sort of organisations in, and we're thinking about ways to do that. I'll be honest, it's unlikely that we would change it to a longer show, because the formula for this particular show we feel works quite well, because it has an immediacy to it.
You get the same amount of people, but over more days, so you don't really gain.
Exactly, and people really like that, and we're not a Mac as such, and we don't sort of feel we compete with Mac, but we would like to look at some ways to try and attract that audience a bit more, and maybe there's something we can do to do that.
What would you, from a visitor experience, it is a good show, it's well put on, Easyfairs do a very good job, but arguably a lot of the stuff you see there you can see online on our website, other websites. Sure. It's expensive away from the factory. Car parking's expensive here. Why do people come here, and why should they come here?
I think that's one thing as well we've tried to work on in the last few years, especially this year more than any, is the networking opportunities and the face-to-face networking. I mean, we always say that no matter what sort of technologies there are, you'll never be able to replace that kind of face-to-face thing, but obviously we need to make sure that people are seeing the right people face-to-face, and this year especially we've brought in a new thing called AE Connect, which is a software which has been used to right up to the show for all the pre-registered attendees and exhibitors to be able to get in contact with each other much more comprehensively, and to really drill down into the sort of people they want to see and meet, and it's been going very well, because we've had before the show started, we had just over 500 pre-arranged meetings through it, which is new for us this year.
So is this meetings between visitors and exhibitors,
or anyone really, because what we realise as well is that there's a lot of peer-to-peer sort of stuff going on, so there might be someone from an OEM who wants to meet another OEM or tier one or investor or innovator, so we want to encourage all types of that kind of thing.
The interesting thing for me is that the name of a show says a lot. Advanced engineering. What do those words mean to you, and how would you best describe that to the person that's looking to attend?
I mean, it's I guess being honest, primarily it's a UK show. Most of the visitors and attendees are UK, although again, we're getting more and more international people coming through. But it's really, we feel, to be showing the capability of the UK's capability in high value manufacturing, because we're world class and world leading at that. Which a lot of people, Joe Public might say, oh, we don't manufacture anything anymore, but they're thinking about the old days where things are happening abroad now, but actually they may not know that we the second biggest aerospace manufacturing country in the world. Although there are difficulties perhaps at the moment with political things going on, there's lots of cars being made here at the moment now, and so we also link that to the fact that we've got a lot of world-class universities and R&D centres here that work with industry. That to me is what advanced engineering and manufacturing is all about. It's using the UK's capability that we've always been so strong at, and actually we feel the show, I want the show to be seen as really helping that to be brought through into commercialisation through the industry, and the UK hasn't necessarily always been great at doing that sometimes, and this is why we love working with people like Warwick Manufacturing Group, and well, you could list loads of people, but
because your exhibitors here, there is a mix of suppliers of products as well as the actual the companies that are actually making the components as well, and there's a good balance.
I guess that's networking opportunity within itself. You go to some other trade shows, you're either selling time or selling equipment, aren't you? Whereas here there is a crossover.
Yes.
A thing that interests me, 10-year anniversary this year. If we fast forwarded 5 or even another 10 years, how do you think this trade show will look? Do you think that things like virtual reality are going to be a big part of it? Because arguably 10 years time you'll be able to experience pretty much what you see out there on your headset.
A lot of it, and we've already got a couple of feature people doing that, showing that with HoloLens, Microsoft HoloLens stuff, and virtual reality. I was looking at one earlier. I guess there'll be a lot more of that. I mean, we've sort of noticed the connected manufacturing part of the show has been one of the biggest exhibitor rebooks already for next year, and it's we always see that the presentation forum in that sector is probably one of the busiest, with standing room only. So I absolutely agree. I think in a few years' time that will have expanded. There will be a lot more virtual reality things going on. Also, though, we do have some plans to develop in a couple of specific new sectors that we'll probably kick off some new little zones for. So, for instance, next year we're looking at the medical technology sector. So we'll have a little area called I think it's called medical devices technology. We've just had a little foray into the nuclear engineering, civil nuclear new build engineering sector. It's very small at the moment, as you might have seen, but we've got some really good content in there. I think that's an industry which has quite a bit of potential with the supply chain for nuclear new build. At the moment, though, it's a little bit slow, I think, because of government involvement, and there's a bit of uncertainty in terms of what we're doing and how we're doing that. But again, that's going to be driven by the need, for instance, over the next few years to reduce carbon emissions. So that's going to be probably reflected in some way in terms of how we might look at nuclear. Or again, I think we'll still see a lot of the physical stuff, light weighting still, very important to reduce carbon. So these are all things that are happening in the next 5 years, I think, that we'll see more of coming through. Smart materials, graphene, that kind of thing.
In regards to UK manufacturing, you mentioned that it's predominantly aimed at the UK market. Now, I hate to mention it, but the Brexit is looming once again. Yeah. Do you believe that people are becoming more patriotic in regards to what's been occurring, and what part does this kind of exhibition play? How important is exhibitions like this in the UK?
Yeah, I think you're right. I mean, there's this sort of, obviously at the moment, as we're speaking, there's a bit of uncertainty. I think it's the uncertainty which is the main thing for a lot of people. But when I talk to a lot of the exhibitors and visitors, a lot of whom are SMEs on the ground, they're just going to get through it by their pure commercialism and innovation, and they make me feel quite confident and comfortable, because they sort of say, well, whatever happens, we've still got to do business, and you can't stop that commercialisation coming through, and it's not going to be government initiatives that are going to kind of solve everything. It's going to be these guys who come to the show who are going to push the business and do
entrepreneurialism.
Entrepreneurialism is the word, isn't it? So, and I see that at the show, and it's quite heartening. I mean, certainly
Did you think that the pending Brexit vote was going to have an effect on this show?
I was just about to say, I worried about it a little bit, but we were talking about it as teams with the sales guys, we're talking to exhibitors. We had very few people that mentioned Brexit, to be honest. I mean, one or two people did, it's bound to, but it really didn't come up as a major kind of issue for us not doing this show. And the other thing we discussed the week before the show was, I wonder how this will affect rebooking. Will people be a bit reticent to rebook? And as I said earlier, we've had the best rebooking on site for the following year that we've ever had in the show's history. So I think a good show is still a good show, and I think, you know, there's also a feeling that the UK is resilient with that intellectual property and with that, you know, with the industry we have, and we need to just carry on pushing through it, you know.
And your choice of position here at the NEC, we mentioned other shows earlier. Well, firstly, actually, I mean, yeah, with this being a Mac year, this must be harder for you to draw not just visitors but also exhibitors as well. Has that firstly had an impact for you?
It might have done a little bit, but as I say, I think it's about the same as last year. We were hoping, we were probably thinking that we might want to grow. To grow over and above what we've had exhibitor-wise, and I think we'll be probably doing more of that next year in the non-Mac year. So yeah, but we're very happy with who we've got and the revenues that we've been getting. That's hit targets.
Growth is growth, isn't it? You know,
Yes.
Trade shows aren't as a global theme aren't necessarily grown, are they, in the event of digital media? So the fact that you're bucking the trend is a absolutely.
And I mean, with the choice of Mac to move to the other halls, are you quite happy with the positioning here of the show? Do you think that would ever be a thought for yourselves to move to different halls?
It's not something major that we've been thinking about at the moment. We still feel that we've got some growth room to go in this hall, and we've had this for about this particular, I say this hall, it's 3 halls, isn't it? 2, 3, 3A. And it's working out quite well in terms of its dynamic and how everything fits together and the flow of traffic. So at the moment we're happy with how it is, and we've got enough room to be able to grow those other sectors I was talking about, like the medical technology one, and possibly the nuclear one, see how that goes.
Is there an average size as well of the stands that people take here? You know,
well, the bigger stands tend to be taken by the composites engineering show guys, and also especially if you go around that networking area, there's some really great stands there now. If you see GRP have got a double-decker stand, and they've sponsored that whole area with the McLaren road car there. So the composites guys especially are upgrading to, the last couple of years have been upgrading to bigger stands, which has probably pushed it to a bigger footprint. And again, we think that can grow further as well. Aerospace can grow further because one of the things that we'll be introducing as well for 2019 within aerospace is a small space section, because we feel that would there's a lot happening in that supply chain in space, and it's quite an interesting one, and the UK is pretty strong in it, and so that's quite an exciting one.
We'd like to send a few of our guys up to space.
The Industry 4
never come back.
The Industry 4 aspect, we were discussing it earlier, you know, in your opinion, where do you believe this lends itself within the industry, and how does it help, you know, make engineers more efficient, and how can it help people in the future?
Yeah, I mean, we see a lot of especially design engineering people coming through the show to visit, and certainly see that that's one of the areas where it's starting to show itself quite a lot in terms of, okay, you've got CAD and CAM, but you've also, and training, you've got those virtual reality propositions where you can go in and actually look at a part for form and fit, for instance, without actually even having to rapid prototype and try it out. And again, we'll see a lot more of that sort of thing happening, and then that being linked to how things start to get tooled up down the line, and so on. That's fascinating for me. I think that's really interesting. I can imagine that there must be huge savings in time, materials, and all that kind of money, of course, through doing that. So I think one of the things that we sort of push about the benefits of that part of the show is to, well, this, you know, you may think that, oh blimey, Industry 4, we've heard that so many times, and it's all about big companies like Jaguar Land Rover spending £100 million on robotics. That's not, for me, that's not about my business, but we want to try and say, well, that could mean for your business, it could mean you just having a piece of software which takes a small bit of time off the production cycle and saves you thousands throughout the year. It means something to absolutely everybody, I think, and it's all about keeping competitive with your overseas partners as well, because I think there are a lot of countries who are further ahead than we are in this, in the UK, of course, as well.
I think that you've been holding some great seminars here this week. Now, for people to start embracing Industry 4.0 and new technology, before they can do that, they need to understand it.
Yes.
So, how important is the education? What points or educational aspects are you trying to put across at the exhibition?
Yeah. Well, I mean, within that forum, the Connected Manufacturing Forum, it does take some of the same type of ideas that we have in the other forums, which is applied and case study based stuff. So I think that's where people can start to relate to things a bit more as well, so it's not too up there and out the way, although we do want to have some pretty good quality content in there as well. So we've got Siemens and IBM, a lot of those other guys speaking as well. So I think it needs to sort of also bring in more of the SMEs as well, though, and look at the case studies for how they've been applying parts of it. Absolutely. And almost to sort of forget about the Industry 4 thing and think about
applications.
Applications, yes, you're absolutely right. So Industry 4 is just a saying, and probably in a few years' time we won't be saying it.
No.
Industry 5.
Industry 5.
We talk a lot on our podcast as well about metal cutting and engineers that invest in technology because they have to change, you have to adapt.
Yes. Yeah.
Shows have to do that as well. 2019 will be just around the corner. For yourself, Jeremy, and Easyfairs, how do you keep momentum with a show like this? As Joe's already correctly alluded to, there are other ways and methods of communication that people can use to get information, so you've got to stay ahead of that, or try and stay ahead of that trend, or do as best as you can. What does 2019 and beyond that hold at your events?
You mean in terms of actual coverage within the show?
Within the show, what you show?
Well, we've quite recently, actually, amongst other things, with our relationships with industry bodies like the ADS and SMMT and lots of others, but we've set up an advisory board for the show, which is a relatively recent thing. It's only really happened in the last 12 months, and it's people come on and off it, whether they can come or not. But we hold meetings usually at the IMECI in a room, and every couple of years, twice a year. So, for instance, we might have somebody from a big tier 1 automotive like Magna International. We might have somebody from the MTC or the AMRC, or so it's a mix of potential visitors, exhibitors. Have someone from Rockwell on there.
And what's the purpose of that?
Really, that's as well to get to help us make. It's like an editorial board almost of a journal, perhaps, that would help us to feel that we're immersed in the industry, because we do like to feel that, in comparison to perhaps a lot of other shows, we are industry people as much as we can be as well. I feel that more than I work in the exhibitions industry, perhaps almost I work in the engineering sector, really. And so they help us to say, that what sort of research is going on, what we might be missing out on, what other things, what other initiatives on funding, government funding, etc. So
it's boots on ground, isn't it? Boots on ground. There's 4 people here. We've got 4 different opinions, I guess. If you've got 10 people in a room, there's 10 opinions, isn't there?
Absolutely, and actually that's encouraged if there's a bit of a sort of,
I suppose that the
people coming against.
One of the points of my question is that we're very active in trying to make sure with what we do as a business and a platform is better than our competition.
Sure.
And I think with events, there are, although albeit less these days than there have been in decades gone by, there is still a lot.
Yes.
And you're still in a lot of instances aiming at the same people. So you've got to try and think of what's the edge to get them to come to advanced engineering.
You are right.
What can we do that makes our show a little bit different, that brings that personnel to us, rather than going, actually I'm going to go to let's say for example a Seco show, the Inspiration Through Innovation, which is successful, and various other ones that we mentioned. What could those things be? Open discussion, really. I mean, it's what do engineers want to see?
That's a great question.
For me, it's value added, isn't it? It probably costs £200-300 to actually come to a trade show when you factor in what you've not done at work, your car parking, your fuel. So you
keep going on about that car park.
£16 today.
Come on, you're
£16. Inflation was 3.5%, wasn't it? That's like 50. But never mind, I'm just tight. But no, you need a reason to come other than just to say hello to a few people. If you're a business owner, it's different, of course. But if I'm a guy on a machine, a programmer, an innovator, a designer, I need a reason to come. I need to learn. I need some value added from the show. But I believe you get that here, but
for me it's to learn something new. For me it's to improve my company, to introduce new technology to make me more efficient, make me more profitable, to learn,
come in here,
find a solution.
Come to the trade show is a small investment because it's costing you money to come. So you've got to get a return on that investment.
And I always think as well with shows like this, the more sort of sector focuses you can have, the more solutions providers you can have, does give you more reason to come if you've got a lot more to take in, albeit then sometimes it can be too much and you need 2 or 3 days to really get that information in, don't you? But it certainly looks, Jeremy, like it's been a good show. 2019 dates in the diary already?
Yes, very similar, but it's the 30th of October to the 31st of October, so still one day over Halloween.
Joe's got his Halloween.
I'm just looking here. I think you need some more headline media partners in there, but but maybe that's a conversation for 2019 and beyond.
We can look at that. We can discuss that.
But it has been a pleasure having you on.
It's been great. Thank you, guys.
Thank you very
much. Lovely to talk to you.
Appreciate your time, Jeremy.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot.